Hi, I'm Ian, and the claim I'm responding to is that the Bible is historically correct in records of the people and places. My opponent's secondary claims are: one, that recent archaeological finds provide evidence for the existence of people and places mentioned in the Bible, and two, the Bible has remained relatively unchanged through the centuries. These are the claims I will be refuting today. So my response to the first claim about how the Bible provides evidence for the existence of people and places mentioned in the Bible. In the advocate's first piece of evidence about the placard referring to Pontius Pilate existing, they seem to have a decent claim, but they don't cite their source. How is anyone going to know if this information is valid or just off some faulty website? The advocate also mentions that this is during the time that Jesus was alive and crucified. But what does Pilate being alive have to do with the fact that Jesus was alive? Just because one guy was alive doesn't mean that necessarily that Jesus was alive. There was no actual evidence stated that Jesus was alive, and if one is basing him living, then that's just an unstable and almost unreliable source. The advocate's second example in this claim about the wall found in Jerusalem that existed 3,000 years ago, proving the lives of King David and King Solomon, has a source that does not necessarily agree with this as being true. In that same Huffington Post article that was used to cite this source, Aaron Meyer, an archaeology professor at Bar Island University, states that he was yet to see evidence that the fortifications are as old as Missouri claims. There are remains from the 10th century in Jerusalem, he said, but proof of a strong centralized kingdom at that time remains tenuous. The advocate's source is misleading and actually contradicts itself in this sense. And these examples here on the advocate's first claim show how the information used can be false or not very clear on the subject. My response to the second claim was about the Bible being relatively unchanged through time. First off, I don't see the controversy in this claim. I'm unclear on who would argue that the Bible would be changed over time, and it's not stated in the speech. So I feel like it's not really an argument, it's just more of just a statement of what everyone already knows. The advocate's example about the Dead Sea Scrolls is a good example on how the Bible has not really changed over time, but then again is an example supporting a claim that has no controversy. This example also is not cited in the speech about the topic, which brings me to the point again that this could just be false evidence or faulty information. I did research and looked at some pagan and atheists who are people who may argue this claim, websites and blogs such as atheist.org and positiveatheist.blogspot.com, and I found nothing about the argument of the Bible changing. It was all the Bible was real or fake, who actually wrote the Bible, stuff like that. So I found nothing on anybody arguing about the Bible changing meaning through time. These examples I just used show how this entire secondary claim does not support the main claim and is merely just an informative statement almost. Although the advocate did not have this listed on the outline, they mentioned towards the end of their speech on how the Bible has helped find historical places and people in today's world. Well, who did it help find and what places did it help find? Without any source or examples, again, this could just be the advocate saying something off the top of his head. All in all, even if some of the evidence did make sense, I did not see how this topic is problematic. Nowhere in the speech, aside from a small part about the Pontius Pilate placard, does the advocate mention anybody disagreeing that the Bible is historically incorrect. In all these examples I have mentioned about the advocate's secondary claim on how the Bible provided evidence for the existence of people and places, and how the Bible has remained relatively unchanged through time, support my refutation on this topic, and how the advocate had insufficient evidence on the Bible being historically correct. Thank you.
All the structural issues are good. The analysis on the first point I thought was kind of interesting. There's a challenge basically on the data and the advocate's citation of that data, and I thought that that was reasonable. But then the reasoning argument that says, but proof that one person exists doesn't necessarily mean that the other exists, I think that that's an okay point to make. However, it sort of misses the larger context of the argument. And that may be in part because the advocate failed to give us enough context. I think we run into the same problem on the third point because we really need to know a little bit more about why some of these claims matter. And you're saying that the advocate never explained why they matter, and you don't really try and give it any context. So I think that all of us are a little bit less informed about what is controversial on this than it ought to be. And you give a good point of view that it really is the advocate's responsibility to make these explanations, and that they really haven't done that as thoroughly as they could. So I thought that that was a pretty good argument. You then, in essence, basically suggest that that whole point is a straw man, that the advocate is disproving an argument that is not really being made by anybody on that particular point. And I thought you did an okay job explaining how you didn't see anybody was making that particular argument. And once again, it may be a failure on the part of the advocate to provide enough context. You attempt to provide some context, and that's okay. So they're mostly general presses on the argument. There doesn't seem like there is as strong a development of any counter evidence or claims on any of these points. And I get the idea that there's only a little bit of clash on these points, and everything could be true and nothing contradicts the other point. So where is, in fact, the conflict here? I think that's a very legitimate question. Thank you.